Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we recap day one of the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine featuring the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Thursday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host Gino Camilleri, recapping day one of the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine. And man, all I can say is wow. Gino, all three position groups today, quarterback, receiver, tight end, put on an absolute show. We're going to get into our takeaways from all three groups today. We've got the offensive line and running backs up tomorrow, and then defense over the weekend. But what a way to kick things off. And it was awesome to have it on prime time. Normally the combine's early in the mornings and you start with offensive linemen, but they just jumped into things today. And I could have watched that for hours more. I know we talked about it, and it's still true to not put everything into the combine and not put too much stock into it. But at the same time, that was extremely entertaining, and it showcased a lot of upside in this draft class at three spots that are extremely important, maybe the most important.
I'd say there's only really one way to describe it, Lou. Bananas. Absolutely bananas to see that many guys.
We're bringing props on the show now.
I mean, what other way could you describe
I kind of wore the prop
guys?
too. I was feeling the arm talent, so I wore a Randall Cunningham jersey on the show.
Lou, we're not even to the defensive backs yet, which people have said could run faster than the wide receivers, which right now, looking at these times, show me that, because we're going to get
I took
into
the over on the 4.29 from BetOnline yesterday, and I don't know what I was thinking, because there were at least 10, maybe 15 receivers today that broke 4.4. And we might have had just John Ross, his 40. I forgot his name because he might not even have the record anymore for the fastest 40 time. It was during commercial. Tyquan Thornton from Baylor ran a 4.21.
Absolutely bananas. I mean, there's no other way to put it, Lou. We just saw 15 guys that have all propelled themselves into a position to be instant impact players. I mean, to look at that group, right, and just see wide receivers coming out there that you're like, okay, this guy produced. And then he runs fast. Chris Olave runs a 4.26. A guy who was one of the best wide receivers in college. Somebody whose route running is on par with the guy that's in Philadelphia currently in Devontae Smith. Now you can match a guy's speed and that route running. That's the ultimate chess piece. And then, Lou, one of our favorites, Christian Watson.
I'm telling you, before it's all
over, what can you
over,
even say about this guy?
He's going to be a first-round pick. He has dominated the offseason. Ran a 4.28 today, a 38.5-inch vertical, 11.4 broad jump, a 98 percentile athlete today. Gino, it was, again, just a show. And we talked about it when we were doing our over-unders on the podcast yesterday, or I think on Tuesday we were doing it, where 4.29 was the line. Like, will somebody break that? And I'm like, I'm not sure how fast this group is. And this might be, from top to bottom, the fastest group of wide receivers that the combine has ever seen. And this wasn't, pandemic pro day 40 times, those phantom ones. We didn't know if they were real or not. You could see the speed. I mean, Gino, even, I didn't expect Olave to run a 4.28, but we knew he was going to run fast. Garrett Wilson runs a 4.37. Not super surprising, right? Calvin Austin clocking a 4.32. I didn't really bat an eye there. Like Danny Gray, we knew from SMU was going to fly. Bo Melton from Rutgers. But then even the guys I thought were more possession, bigger receivers, George Pickens Pickens from Georgia runs a 4.4 flat. A Baylor receiver in Khalil Shakir, I thought was more of a possession guy, runs a 4.35. I mean, it's going to be really difficult when it comes time to rank all these receivers from top to bottom. It is a deep class. I wouldn't be surprised if you see 15 or 20 of them by, halfway through day 2.
Yeah, Khalil Shakur out of Boise State there. I think you said Baylor, but yeah, man, there's just guys.
Yeah, Boise State.
I mean, Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor, Khalil Shakur out of Boise State. These guys are coming from big-time programs. I mean, going down the list, Tyquan Thornton, Baylor, Chris Olave, Ohio State, Christian Watson, North Dakota State, the Alabama of FCS, Velus Jones, Tennessee, Calvin Austin, Memphis, Alex Pierce, dude, 4.33 out of Cincinnati, just comes out of the woodwork and runs through the moon. Danny Gray, SMU, Bo Melton, Rutgers, Khalil Shakur, Boise State. These programs that have these intense strength and conditioning programs, I think we're starting to see a change where they're really focusing on that all year long. Like, these guys are track athletes. I think Ocho Cinco had tweeted it out after that Tyquan Thornton ran track with his daughter down in Florida. Like,
the craziest part is he stumbled out of the gate, Gino. Like, he ran a 4.21, and I thought his first 8 steps, he was off balance. I mean, it was such a show from top to bottom. And there were guys like, you mentioned Bo Melton and, Velus Jones ran a 4.31. I noticed a lot in Mobile separated very consistently. We didn't even mention Sky Moore from Western Michigan. Like, not even just we've gone back and forth with like, should the Eagles take a first round receiver? I would love to come away with one of those Ohio State kids, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. We've mentioned Treylon Burks, who had a good day, but the Eagles also need return help as well in the draft this year in the offseason. And when you see guys like Danny Gray and Bo Melton and Velus Jones and, Calvin Austin, it's really exciting, the possibilities of the depth. There isn't really a bona fide, I would say, Devontae Smith in this class where like a Jamar Chase, but the depth and the variety too, it was on display today.
I don't know, man. I mean, you could make the case for Garrett Wilson. I think Daniel Jeremiah has him ranked as his 6th overall prospect right now. He could be a top 10 pick. I think Bucky Brooks put out his mock draft that had Drake London at 7, and he didn't even run today. Now, Lou, I think we have to have a real conversation about how this board is going to fall with offensive talent being in the top 15. I thought it was going to be,
man. I tried doing my top 10 rankings, like, just in my head during the workouts. And I was like, do I have Drake London 7th? I mean, the way I was just rattling off names, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this shapes up.
I mean, you look at a team like the Giants who have 2 picks. You look at the Jets who could, of course, use another receiver for Zach Wilson. You look at, I mean, even the Carolina Panthers, they could add somebody if they get another quarterback. Like, that top 10 of this draft could be really offensive heavy, where we thought it could be very, very defensive heavy, which I still believe it will, but it could be an even split. I could seriously see 1 or maybe even 2 quarterbacks going. I mean, somebody falls in love with Kenny Pickett, who knows? But Malik Willis, what he showed off today,
we're going to get into it. Trust me.
I think he is a top 10 pick when it's all said and done. Then you have to add in Drake London. Then you have to add in Evan Neal. Then you have to add in the possibility of another wide receiver, or maybe even 2 wide receivers going in the top 10. Like, I think it could be an even split, 5 offense, 5 defense. And then we have to figure out where the Eagles fall into that equation. Right now, they could have a chance at getting one of these top 5 receivers, Lou. And I'm fine with taking any of them at 15, 16,
even after
19.
that. I mean, I tweeted it out. I wouldn't bat an eye right now if they took Christian Watson at 19th overall, or, Jahan Dotson from Penn State, who, he was disappointed he didn't break the 4.4, but I thought he showed off his top tier hands today, was smooth in his route running. I know everybody I think we would prefer to have a veteran receiver in this room with the Eagles to complement Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins, but at the same time, I would be okay with, some people are like, you can't take another receiver early. I absolutely think you can, and you have the flexibility with these draft picks. I think if one of these guys falls, like even Treylon Burks today, he didn't have a perfect day, a 33-inch vertical, only ran a 4.5 flat, but even Burks, like, I don't care about that. I mean, he's a builder, and he showed on tape that he is sudden and has burst, and he can win consistently against press. If one of these guys falls, if one of those Ohio State receiver falls, I mean, Gino, this is a great year today excited me, the fact that we saw a lot of these prospects, and the Eagles have 4 picks in day 1 and day 2. Even on day 2, if you wanted to take a Calvin Austin and put him inside, everything's on the table.
Optionality, brother. I mean, we have to get away from this idea that the sunk cost of taking wide receivers matters. Like, that's in the past. You can't go back and fix that pick. What you can fix is the future. And I look at a team like Cincinnati, who had Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, all within their first 5 years of the league, right, yeah. Lou? And then I'm saying, man, like, if you could grow a wide receiver room from scratch and not have to spend big money on it and have 2 guys that are consistent winners on rookie contracts for at least the next 4 years with Devontae and potentially another one with the 5th-year option of a rookie that you would take in the first round. I mean, that takes away $40 million right there, at least, right. Because you're looking at the contracts of Devontae Adams could probably get $25 million on the open market if somebody was willing to pay him that. By the time they're going to pay these receivers, they're going to command top dollar. We know quarterback money's big, but playmaker money is just as big. And yeah, it would be nice to go out and sign Mike Williams or Allen Robinson, but we just had this discussion a week ago that these guys get priced out. Second wide receivers get number 1 wide receiver money, which inevitably bumps everybody up.
And don't get me wrong, I would love a Christian Kirk or a DJ Chark or one of those second-tier free agents as well. I think they would fit. But when it comes time for that debate, if those other guys do price themselves out, you could argue that it might be smarter to invest one of those 1st or 2nd round picks in another receiver instead of, paying a rental, a 1-year prove it deal. So, everything's on the table, and today showed the depth and the variety of this receiver class. And man, was it entertaining to watch. But Gino, the quarterbacks were fun to watch as well, and we're going to get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's BetOnline. I hope you guys did take the under on that 4.29 fastest 40 time, because a lot of guys went under it. But because football is over this season, that doesn't mean that football betting stops. You can make bets on the combine, the NFL draft. Who's the first receiver that's going to go off the board? Quarterback as well. Today made that a difficult discussion. You can do all of that, as well as bet on basketball, NBA and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, and UFC at BetOnline.net. From the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to go, they remain your number 1 spot for all your sports betting needs. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device, betonline.net, to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, Louis DiBiase, Gino Camilleri. This is a Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure you're also following Locked On NFL, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories across the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and it's Combine Week. So today we're recapping day 1, which was extremely entertaining to watch the receivers, the tight ends, which we'll get into in segment 3. But Gino, quarterback today as well. I'm going to continue to reiterate, I think, and you saw it today, this 2022 draft class that is mistakenly being compared to 2007 and 2013 and historically the worst classes in NFL history. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be that bad. There is a lot more talent, a lot more upside in this class than people are giving it credit for. Are there going to be 4 or 5 amazing stars? Probably not. But there are at least a few that are going to be damn good players in this league. And you could see the physical upside today, like that arm strength drill at the end with Carson Strong and Malik Willis. I could have watched that for hours.
It's fun to watch the quarterbacks in that setting where, they don't have guys on them. We know we're not going to put a lot of stock into that, but to just see the pure arm talent, right? And just to see the ability to see these guys push it down the field. And I thought just up and down the board, I thought all the quarterbacks really had a good day. Like just getting the ball out on a slant. Like I thought Brock Purdy, who's not my favorite thrower of the football, looked pretty good out there. Skylar Thompson is somebody who I think is going to make a team based on his athleticism. Like didn't run the fastest at a 4.86, but what he did at K-State, he's a guy who is all over the formation and can do a lot of things at quarterback. I don't know who said it the other day, Lou, but I saw a tweet that said 2017 was kind of like this quarterback class where people didn't love it. They're like, okay, there's the project of Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. Did he already hit his ceiling at Clemson?
Mm-hmm.
I think I get a little bit of Deshaun Watson vibes out of a guy like Desmond Ritter, right? Like
who he compared himself to actually a couple days ago.
Did he? I didn't.
Yeah,
he said that. I think that's.
He said he's a mix. He sees himself as a mix play style wise of Ryan Tannehill and Deshaun Watson. So it's interesting you said that.
Yeah, he has a little bit more thickness to him in his build and his frame, and
yeah, he does.
I think Daniel Jeremiah had said it, or maybe Jim Nagy, that he's not getting talked about as much as he should in this draft.
I don't get why Kenny Pickett is being talked more over Desmond Ritter and Matt Corral.
I mean, Kenny,
it doesn't make sense to me.
Kenny has to be in a very specific offense. Like, you saw the lack of arm strength with Kenny Pickett today. It's tough for him. I mean, I know the small hand thing, you could say what you want about it, but there's going to be games when you have to push the ball down the field, and there were probably 4 or 5 other guys in that drill, just pure arm talent-wise, that I would say could make a better throw.
There was a notable difference.
Yeah, I thought Ritter threw the ball really well down the field today. Of course, Carson Strong, who I've been hyping up to you people for months now. The kid,
I wish he could run, man, because he can
launcher.
Whip that football.
Dude,
oh my gosh,
crazy.
It's
Dude, he almost like, you know who he reminds me of? Is like Brett Favre, to where like he would just throw it way too hard, and you're like, why is he throwing it that hard? And it's like, because he can't.
I love that he was delaying his drop back too, because he wanted his receivers to get deeper, because he was trying to show that off today.
Yeah, and we've said prior to this, like, don't get too hung up in all of what the quarterbacks do on the field, but what they do behind closed doors. And the talk is that Malik Willis interviewed very, very well. And that's not a shocker. The clip came out today of him in the streets of Indianapolis, giving some of his stuff that he got from the combine to a homeless person that was sitting on the side of the street. Talk about a leader, man. Like, some team is going to fall into this kid, and he's going to have a rocket arm. He's going to have freak athleticism. And you get a guy that I believe a city is just going to embrace. I know
he's not leaving the top 10, Gino. I'm convinced. Not. He's not leaving the top 10.
I think Carolina is a very, very good potential.
And if not, I think Atlanta could take him. I wouldn't be surprised. You could make the case that Houston should take him, honestly. Like, I think at 3 overall.
Absolutely, Lou.
It would make a ton of sense. Today he showed that off, but I'm glad you mentioned like the interview stuff too, and he was really impressive on the whiteboard. That's what we brought up last week with Willis. I wanted to hear that because a lot of the issues with Willis at Liberty was processing, decision-making. But my question was that more because of the environment he was in? You know, is he intelligent? Does he process things quickly when it comes to football? And it sounds like he does. And that's a guy that I'm willing to bet, like Josh Allen did from Wyoming to the Bills, taking step by step in 2018, 2019, then the big step in 2020. I'm willing to bet on that guy, especially considering the physical traits. And you know, we mentioned Carson Strong's arm, but Malik Willis today was showing it off. And, you know, a lot of people compare him. NFL Network today showed the comparison side to side of him and Jalen Hurts. And I get it, but
to
me, like, this is, I hate when people say the Eagles would never take Malik Willis because of Jalen Hurts. In actuality, the Eagles should love Malik Willis, Gino, because he has all the positive characteristics of Jalen.
The guy you're wearing on your uniform is the human embodiment
That's why I wore it.
What Malik Willis is currently.
He has the mental makeup, the leadership, the poise, the toughness of Jalen Hurts. He has the mobility, and then you add superior speed and arm talent. The Eagles should be exactly like that's what you want Jalen Hurts to be, is kind of what Malik Willis is.
I totally agree with Lou. Like, I think with the talent that's in this class, like, I'm falling in love with the idea of just taking the 3 picks and just getting better and setting up the team for the future. But at the same time, what a guy like that can bring to a team is just what you've seen in Josh Allen, what you've seen in Pat Mahomes. I think a team in the top 10 is going to get really lucky and fall in love with this kid. And I think it'll be way too rich for the Eagles' blood if they even wanted to go and do that. Get more talent in a very depth-ridden class. But man, oh man, is it just fun to watch the evolution of this kid and see him in the room talking to the quarterback coaches, the offensive coordinators, and going through everything that we had questions on. And it was because of what they did at Liberty. It was very RPO based, like one read, go. Maybe if he had to make up the play a little bit, he would kind of just go off the whim. And I think that's where he kind of got into trouble. I didn't think they had like the most intense offense when it came to X's and O's. I think a team is going to have to be willing to put in the time to develop him, put a very strong quarterback room behind him. Mm-hmm. But there's no way, and we need to put this to bed. I'm fine with who Jalen Hurts is. I know who he is as a quarterback. But people, you can't look yourself in the mirror and tell me you watch Malik Willis throw the football down the field and say Jalen Hurts has the same arm with him. I'm not trying to take anything away from Jalen. Give the kid his damn respect. The kid has a special arm. Like, you can't look at Josh Allen and say, oh, yeah, Jalen Hurts can make that throw. No, you can't. You can't just say that to say things. You have to understand who your quarterback is. We're not going to have a guy that's throwing 61-yard bombs like Justin Herbert. He's going to be a guy who really works in the intermediate areas, find guys in the deep third, 40 to 50 yards, but you're never going to see these unbelievable home run balls, which I believe you'll get out of a Carson Strong. You'll get out of Malik Willis. Why? Because I saw it on tape. And Jalen Hurts, he still has to show that. It didn't just start
today. Like, we're not overreacting to what we just saw at the combine. No. It's confirming what we did know about Carson Strong and Malik Willis. And all I'm saying, I'm not saying the Eagles should, but I'm not saying the Eagles are going to or should trade up for Malik Willis into the top 10. All I'm saying is, and I know, again, we talked about it yesterday, the advantage that even Howie Roseman laid out of having your quarterback already in place, the steps he's taken, wanting that to work out so you have all these picks to build around him on the roster, having the optionality of Hurts this year, seeing what he does, then evaluating the 2023 class. All I'm saying is I don't want the 2022 quarterbacks to be completely off the board, off the table, as if it's not an option. Because I think, again, yes, that other avenue I laid out, it is ideal. But I do think that guys like Willis and Ritter and maybe even Corral have as much of a chance to be the guy as Jalen does potential-wise, as the, let's face it, the mid-first-round prospects in 2021 will. Because the Eagles are not going to be good enough or bad enough to get C.J. Stroud or, Bryce Young. So I'm just saying it should still be something that's on the board for them. And, Howie Roseman didn't rule it out yesterday. Everything is still on the table. So that's all I'm trying to say is I just think this class is better than people are saying. And when you have 3 first-round picks, it's something you have to evaluate because you could still even potentially get one of these guys and build around him like you could Jalen.
There is never not a year that the Philadelphia Eagles do not evaluate quarterback talent. Mm-hmm. They will forever do it until Howie Roseman is gone and after Howie Roseman is gone, because the guy who's sitting up at the top of Lincoln Financial Field, Mr. Jeffrey Lurie, knows and wants a premier quarterback in the National Football League. And hopefully we could see the development of Jalen Hurts by putting things around him. But never, unless you have Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, rule out the ability of a team taking a quarterback. Because if you don't have a top 5 guy, you have nothing at all in this league.
Yeah, I agree. Gino, before we take another break and start talking about some tight ends, I want to get back to what you mentioned about Kenny Pickett. The 8.5-inch arm hands, not really concerned. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really concerned about that as much, although it can be an issue with fumbling and cold weather if you don't have 2 hands on the football, especially when you're a mobile quarterback and you like to, do things outside of structure like Pickett did at Pitt. I'm more worried about, and again, when I was watching him compared to Ritter, Strong, and Willis, there is a notable difference. And so I care less about the arm size and more about the fact that this is going to be, when his rookie year starts, he'll be 24 years old. He was a 5-year starter in college that I just, regardless of hand size, I don't think has a high enough ceiling that's worthy of a first-round pick, let alone being the first quarterback off the board. Desmond Ritter, to me, the fact that him, Matt Corral, even Malik Willis to a certain degree are being talked about less than Pickett. And it seemed like this consensus that Pickett's going to be the first guy. I don't understand it. Like, make it make sense. Like, somebody debate me why it should be Pickett over somebody like Desmond Ridder, when Desmond Ridder is testing like a 98 percentile athlete at quarterback, running a 4.49. He was as impressive on the board and showing leadership to these teams as Willis was. Like, I just don't understand why you can make the argument for Pickett over the other guys, but why it's so clearly Pickett dominant. I've been confused about that for months.
I don't know. I mean, apparently Pitt quarterbacks are more pro ready to come in the NFL. Oh yeah, Nathan Peterman worked out real well, right? I mean,
I think Desmond Ritter's more. He's got 43 wins heading in.
No, that's just a nonsense narrative that is thrown around, right? And I think when I look at any of them, I look at Bailey Zappi as a more interesting guy than I do Kenny Pickett. I think you could get more out of him long term in terms of development towards a ceiling than you can with Kenny. I think what you see is what you get with Kenny Pickett. Like, Bailey Zappi played in this crazy air raid offense, like put up banana land numbers. But if you could hone that in, it's kind of like a guy who throws like a 104-mile-an-hour fastball but can't hit the strike zone. Like, if you could hone that in, you could figure something out. But a guy who only throws an 89-mile-an-hour changeup and can only hit 92 on his fastball isn't going to survive long in the NFL. I just think that's Kenny Pickett, man. Like, I'm right there with you. I don't see it either to the point where I'm like, yeah, Matt Corral still could grow and did well in college, and Malik Willis is going to be a star, and Carson Strong's arm strength. If I'm going to take one of these two guys who can't run, do I want somebody who could get it down the field 65 yards? Yeah, maybe I'll invest in Strong.
And he's got the floor. Like, I think Pickett on the Steelers or Broncos would make a lot of sense. And I guess you could, but like, why the Panthers would take Pickett over Willis or Ridder, I just, that part doesn't make much sense.
You'd be taking crazy pills.
Yeah. But it was fascinating to watch the quarterbacks. I thought they had a good day today. Gino, we'll wrap up the show coming up next, talking about tight end. Talk about a deep class that was on display with variety. It was tight end, and the Eagles could use one this year. So we'll get into it right here on Locked On Eagles coming up next. All right, Eagles fans, Louis DiBiase and Gino Camilleri wrapping up this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles. We're recapping day one of the NFL Scouting Combine down in Indianapolis. It was the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends on full display today, prime time. So all eyes were on it. They were in front of a crowd, Gino. You were hearing a lot of, cheers, especially for, some local prospects. And, we talked about receiver already and the blazing speeds these guys put on today. The quarterbacks showing off the arm strength, specifically Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, and Carson Strong. But to start the day, we're kind of going in reverse order here. The tight end started things off, and did they talk about depth and variety of a prospect pool? We've been talking about it every Mock Draft Monday, saying, man, we'd love to come away with another young tight end to go behind Dallas Goedert. And today there were a lot of guys that impressed me. And I normally I don't care too much about taking a tight end early, probably because they've had Goddard and Ertz, but today made me want one even more.
I am so blown away with the evolution of the tight end position. It has me at a loss for words that I'm looking at Chig Okonkwo and watched him twice run a faster 40 time than Treylon Burks.
4.52.
These guys are premier athletes at a position which I only think is getting more and more important. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz. Now these guys are running 4.5s, Lou. And it's up and down the board in a class where we haven't even talked about Jelani Woods and Chig Okonkwo, who were at the East-West Shrine game, or Grant Calcaterra, who was down at in Mobile, and he was probably like the sixth best guy there because you had Cole Turner and Trey McBride to worry about. And, I mean, Peyton Hendershot, the local kid out of Indiana, you talked about, he was getting cheered up and down. And guys like Austin Allen coming out there and still running a 4.83, which in any other year is right on par with what the average is. Now these guys are running in the sub 4.6s. You need 1 to 2 premier tight ends to compete in the NFL. And they're right there in the position where they could draft one, Lou, on day 2 in that around the 60th pick.
Yeah.
Would you be shocked if they did that?
If they did in the third round, if they went for someone like Jelani Woods or a Jake Ferguson, even Jeremy.
That's your guy. That's your guy is Jake Ferguson.
I like just because I feel like he'd be the perfect solid tight end too. I mean, he's not he didn't test out as well as Jelani Woods or Jalen Wodemeyer, but I think he seems very safe, and he was really impressive at the Senior Bowl with his hands. But Jelani Woods today, to run a 4.61 when you're 6'7", I mean, talk about traits that some of these tight ends have. And I think he led all tight ends in bench reps with 24. Okonwu ran a 4.52. There's variety you saw today. The all-around guys, Trey McBride and Greg Dulcich, who's Daniel Jeremiah's top tight end.
Today, man. I'm upset about that, but I will be at that CSU Pro Day. I will be there.
I'm bummed Isaiah Likely didn't run either. He's one of the speedsters of this class. I didn't even mention Cole Turner from Nevada showed off some good, strong hands today, body control in some of those drills. I would like to come away with one of these players to add to that young group with Jack Stahl and Tyree Jackson.
I think what we could take away from the whole day in total is that there's a chance, and what Daniel Jeremiah, that is, said in his tweet the other day, that the difference between pick 1 and pick 60 in this class is so minute. And what better of a year to be in this position for the Eagles to have 4 picks in that priority position. And hypothetically, you could trade out of there if a team like Tampa wants to come down and grab a quarterback at 15 or 16, move out and grab another second-round pick potentially, or another first-round pick the year after that, and still walk away with potentially 3 to 4 starters on day 1 and the first round of day 2. And beyond that, Lou, we're going to see so many more positions that have athletic specimens over the next 3 days. Once we get to defensive line, hold your horses, folks, because we are in for an absolute Barnum and Bailey-esque showcase for what the defensive line is going to do in a couple days.
We have the offensive linemen and running backs tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles wherever you get your podcast, because we will have a recap show for you tomorrow night as well. We're available on YouTube as well in video form. We've got all our shows and YouTube exclusive content. Subscribe to our channel. We're on Twitter as well, all throughout the day, every day at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football. And at DiBiase LOE. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.